Got a notification. Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, it's going.
The phone. Again.
It's so interesting as soon as you switch to live.
Yeah. How's that? No.
No. Check,
No.
check. There's no one here. Oh, someone just joined.
Okay. Yeah. We're already having technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. Cove's off-road performance. Adam Butler. Woohoo! We're having technical difficulties, of course. It's just the way things go around here, as you know. Adam knows better than anybody. We're going to get started here. What's up, Carl? We're having technical difficulties, so we'll be starting shortly. We just have an iPhone that's acting up.
Yeah. I did what I did yesterday and it's still not working, so.
Check, check, no?
Nah, it's
I don't
making
hear
noise.
it now.
Oh, I can hear it.
Oh, you can hear it? Oh, maybe we just live with it.
Yeah. Whatever.
Alberta Power Sports. Yeah, the boys are here.
Oh, yeah, that's Henry.
Yep. It's either Henry or Josh.
Yeah, we're going to deal with a little echo, but, whatever.
Yeah, we got a little echo, possibly. Go to this chair.
Just on our end.
Well, we might as well get started.
We just get to listen to ourselves.
Anyone that's, gents and ladies that are joining us, we are doing this because we've had so many questions about the Kove bikes, and we wanted to set up a situation where we're going to answer some of the questions that we've received through comments and emails just to get things going. But if you guys have comments and questions, that's what the real focus is for us. We'd love you guys to be able to ask questions in real time, and then we'll do our best to answer them, given the parameters we have as far as time restrictions and a dog. Oh, the other thing we're going to talk about is the Asian elephant in the room. I don't know if you guys saw the preview text for this, but it was, this is the Asian elephant that's in the room. And no one seems to be talking about the fact that it's Chinese. Well, I shouldn't say that. Everyone's concerned that it's Chinese. So we're going to talk about that too. So if you guys have questions about this bike being Chinese. And of course, we've got Chuck with us, who is mechanic extraordinaire, who unboxed these things and went through them. And Chuck, I don't know, have you done much mechanical with this so far?
Well, I haven't had to do a huge amount, but on two of them, I deleted the charcoal system, and I modified the skid plates because they're made for Asian feet.
Cool.
I put heated grips on them and hand guards. Other than that, I've set the tire pressures, and I think that's about it. We swapped the ECUs a bunch of times, but that's like literally a 2-minute job.
And Anthony is in the background. Anthony's our tech guy, and he is going to serve up some questions for us just to get this going, because we've got a few questions clipped from, like I say, people that asked us in comments or sent us emails. So Anthony, if you want to throw a question out, Chuck can read it.
Okay.
And I think everybody might be able to see this question.
Okay.
So Chuck can read it.
What people are interested in is reliability and the access to parts from routine maintenance to top-end rebuilds. It can be a unicorn, but if finding filters, brake pads, fork seals, and pistons for the things that wear and need replacement, then it won't be a viable option. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
It's a good way to start. So you go ahead, give me your opinion. And
yeah, I mean, I think that hit it on the head. The important thing, like, every bike is going to break down and every bike is going to have mechanical issues, and obviously every bike needs maintenance. And the real question is, what is the support going to be like? What is parts availability going to be like? And I mean, we don't know yet. Like, I don't think we can really say what it's going to be like. There are good indicators and it's looking good, but at this point, I'd say it's just way too early to tell.
Yeah. My limited amount of experience with Chinese bikes, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference like Chuck, because he's mechanical and I'm just simply not. But riding this motorcycle for me, it feels really good. It feels really solid. It feels like all the other dirt bikes that I've ridden. It doesn't feel chintzy.
And usually you can tell, like if you're riding a Chinese bike, like you can tell.
Yeah,
Either the foot pegs are like flexible or like
yeah, and I don't feel any of that. I just feel like it's just another dirt bike from another manufacturer. And sure, it's Chinese, and that's a huge deal. But to me, it doesn't feel any different than all the bikes I've been riding for the last 20 years. And I think the success of this motorcycle will not, or the success or failure of this motorcycle will not be because of the bike itself. It's going to be the very, very difficult logistics of making sure that parts are available and guys are not suffering downtime. And then, of course, over time, which we have not experienced yet, we're going to see what fails. But we can't talk about that right now because we just don't know.
I think there is an important distinction that needs to be made and that often isn't. And I talked about this in when I reviewed the TM, and whether there are two potential big hiccups, and that's whether the manufacturer is manufacturing enough parts and manufacturing parts fast enough. And that is a totally separate issue from is the distribution set up. And with the Kove, I feel like both of those are they could potentially be an issue. But if you guys have seen cross-training enduro videos, Barry's videos, you'll know that this engine is already in a bunch of other Chinese bikes. So that I would think should help with I don't think that the manufacturer supplying parts is going to be an issue. And both in the States and in Canada, and I assume probably in other countries as well, the distribution, the people that are in charge of the distribution are running off their feet to put everything in place, and so far it looks good.
I completely agree with all that. Anthony, I'm going to butt in with a topic before we get a question. There's 3 words I'm hearing all the time in all the comments and all the emails and all that stuff, and it's obviously Chinese. The next word I hear is knockoff. The next word I hear is cheap, and then the next word I hear is intellectual property theft. And then it goes on and on and gets uglier and uglier from that point. So
there's a comment right here about it.
Yeah, perfect. So I'm going to let Chuck address that because he's got the eyes of a mechanic and he's seen a lot of metal in his hands over a long period of time, and he's best suited to address that question.
Should we? Okay, so which part of that list should we address first?
Okay, here's an easy one. Is this a knockoff?
No, it's not a knockoff. It's not even a question anymore. This is not a knockoff.
So there's no how much intellectual property theft is happening, because that's everyone's screaming about dirty Chinese, blah blah blah, going crazy about property, stealing our ideas. And
the suspension. Now, I don't know about the suspension. The shock looks a lot like a Showa, but the newer Showas, they're the damping adjustments, the clickers and everything, they're on the other side. The reservoir is sideways instead of up and down, like a lot of WPs or KYBs. So the suspension reminds me of Showa. It looks like it, but it's not the exact same. So I feel like there's a spectrum. It's not like what the CRF 450 knockoffs were. Right. Those were knockoffs. You look at it, you look at the engine, it's oh yeah, that's a CRF 450, except with really, chintzy parts on it. This is not that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't know much about mechanical, but the only thing that I even recognize at all is the rear sprocket is, it's a quote unquote knockoff. I don't know if you guys can see that or not.
It looks like a Super sprocket. It looks.
Yeah, it's the same concept.
It looks exactly like it, but there are other sprocket manufacturers on the market that are doing the exact same thing as that already. So I don't know. I have no interest in giving excuses. So that looks like a Super Sprox knockoff. Other than that, there's nothing that's a direct knockoff. But if they took inspiration from From other brands, I mean, of course they will, but I can't look at it and pick out what parts are inspired by some other bike.
And I don't know. I know a little bit about intellectual property, and I'm sure someone in the comments knows more than I do, but I think that like a patent expires after a certain amount of time, and I think it's 10 years. And after the patent expires, it's like the competition rolls in with the same copy.
Yeah, I know nothing about that.
Yeah, that's my impressions. I don't know, but I'm sure someone can chime in, and Anthony can talk about that. So, yeah, I mean,
there's also a difference between what's legal and what's morally right.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of people have questions about that. But
that's a big topic.
I don't know what's legal.
Yeah.
You know, I have my opinions about what's morally right, but I don't know what's legal.
Yeah. We get another question on the screen.
Okay, so if you buy an off-brand bike of most any sort, you might want to be ready to keep it. Selling a used one is an exercise in, no, really, it's totally bitching.
So his suggestion is that we buy this bike and then it's all going to come apart and we're going to get stuck with a Kove that's worth nothing.
Whether it comes apart or not, we're going to get buried with them.
Just in the sense that the resale value is going to be worth nothing.
Yeah, just because they're weird.
Right. Yeah, I would say that about any weird bike. I was a Husaberg fanatic for years and years and years and years. And I still have two, what are they, 450 FEs? FXs in, one's a parts bike and one sort of runs sometimes.
The 70-degree Berg. Yeah,
the 70-degree one, the old ones. And now that those are obsolete, like clearly obsolete for a long time, very few people know what those are. So it's almost like I've got two antique collector items that are rare and weird. So I can't expect to get decent used market money for that. Maybe that's what's going to happen to these. We don't know.
It's certainly possible. I feel like it all depends. Like, so I was talking with Henry, the Canadian distributor, importer, and I don't know what's public and what's not, so I can't say exactly what the plan was, but he had some really interesting ideas to get support in place really quickly, really outside the box stuff. I'm super excited about it. I hope it happens. But I think that's going to affect resale. Like, if within 2 to 3 years, there's a really solid support system in place, I mean, these things are already, the internet's blowing up about them. So a lot of people already know what they are. So I think it could go either way.
Yeah, I'm actually hoping that it goes well. And the reason why is I'm going to show my cards, but as you know, I like this bike. I'm a big fan already for maybe some romantic ideas, for some romantic reasons. One of them is when I was young, I used to watch the Dakar or get snippets of a Dakar, because obviously there was no internet, so it was hard to do anything like that. But when I did see snippets of the Dakar, I was fascinated with that race. I was obviously in love with two wheels for a long time. And I always thought, man, it'd be cool to ride a Dakar bike. Like, that would be a cool bike to ride and own. And now, right beside me that I can touch is a Dakar bike. And I've ridden it, and it has fulfilled the fantasy for me. Yeah. and I love it. I love the concept of it for all kinds of different reasons. And now that Chuck has blessed the mechanical portion of it, along with the fact that it completed the Dakar. And, we had guys bitching on the comments about it finished 45th. But you got to think about what a monumental thing it is to even get to the Dakar start line, let alone finish 12 or 13 stages. Is 12 or 13? I don't know.
Let alone all three.
Yeah, all three. So that's why everyone's interested in this motorcycle, is because it actually 3 bikes finished the Dakar. It's like the ultimate proving grounds for both man and machine. And now that Chuck has said mechanically it's reasonable,
from what I see so far, it doesn't worry me.
And anyone who doesn't know, we're in British Columbia, and British Columbia is this raw, wild place with more forest service roads than you can ever imagine for a lifetime, and more things to see. And I think this is the dream bike that I couldn't fantasize more about, a bike to explore British Columbia. That's why I'm so thrilled about this motorcycle, is because with 30 liters on board, all of those rides that we did in the past where there was scheduled fuel stops every day because we couldn't make it across certain parts of British Columbia, this bike is going to solve it. And I'm just like losing my marbles.
The comment that's on the screen right now, basically, it's just a quick question about does the overall design make sense, and are bolts common sizes? Yes and yes. Like the spring rates, I haven't tested the spring rates, but they make total sense. Like the bike feels good. Coming from a dirt bike perspective, I feel like the front end tends to be a little bit low, like it's a little bit front end biased, but not nearly as much as the 690 701 platform.
What about that? Did that change it?
Yeah, that made it better. So I raised up the triple clamps to bring the front end of the bike up a couple millimeters, and I really can't complain about it. Like the bike feels great. And yeah, the bolts are all common sizes, normal metric fasteners, just like you'd get on a KTM. There's Zeus fasteners on them too, like on the fairing, which is awesome. The seat comes off with just like a 690 with a little cable. Everything on the bike makes sense.
What about that?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's all.
Anthony, you got another one for us? Or somebody else get some from the comments?
Oh, there's a whole bunch of comments. The clutch and brake perch is cheap. Oh, that could be, but we have handguards on it. So, I mean, that's why we run handguards, because we fall down a lot.
And there, I mean, we don't not run there's never a bike that we use that doesn't have handguards on it.
Yeah.
Bark busters too.
Yeah. Yeah, so we don't bend them. One of these days, I'm going to do a test to see what's stronger, bark busters or cycra guards. And it's going to upset a lot of people. Oh, okay, Dakar riding is so very different from what most people do. Given that this is a Dakar bike, what do you see people using it for?
Oh,
great question. Excellent question.
Yeah. You want me to go?
I have something to say for sure, and I imagine you do as well.
Oh,
So
for sure.
Whichever.
Yeah, I'll go. So I've thought about this a lot because it's been a barrage of questions and interest. And what I realize is that it really matters about what your personal objectives are and where you ride and how you ride and what's the terrain where you live. Like we live in British Columbia, so this makes a lot of sense as a dual sport bike. For me, this is a dirt biker's dual sport bike, and it fits into British Columbia so well. But if we lived in southwestern Ontario, or if we lived in, I don't know, pick a place in the United States, like eastern seaboard of the US, where it's mostly trail riding or...
Man, I don't know. Like when I think about what's in Ontario, you know, what I grew up riding, sandy single track, it works.
It works, but you wouldn't choose that to ride that.
Not to like, it's not a dirt bike.
Right.
It's not for riding single track.
Right. And I don't think that if you only have a place where you're going to run single track or technical double track, you're going to want to choose something different than this. You have to have it in your mind that you want to go places.
Yes.
Like you want to stretch your legs, and you know, a ride is... What was that ride that we did? We did a 6-hour ride.
120K.
120K. Now, on dirt bikes, we're out for the day and we'll put 60 to 70K on maybe.
I can go 100K on a leisurely ride day on my TPI.
Right. Leisurely.
Leisurely.
Yeah. Range-wise. But like that's not typically what you do with your TPI.
No, usually I go 6 hours and I go like 30 or 40 kilometers.
Right. So like if you're a dirt bike rider that likes to do technical stuff, this is not for you. It's
not a dirt bike.
No, it's not a dirt bike. But if you want to explore your local area, say within a 2 or 3 hour radius, this is brilliant. If you got a lot of gravel roads, secondary roads, some open space around where you live, where you want to go places, this is the bike to do it. Barry, I was talking to Barry, that weirdo from Enduro Cross Training Skills. He asked me how it was on the road. Now, these are not legal on the road, so I can't technically tell you. But if we did go on the road with these, I would say that they were very smooth, and they were very impressive on the road. It was smooth. There was a bit of wind protection. We were going between 80 and 120 kilometers on a off-road straight track. And
you should say they're not road legal yet.
Yeah. Everyone is hoping that these are going to be road legal, as are we. But from the non-pavement that we did ride at high speeds, it was impressive, man. It was smooth.
Yeah.
There was no vibrations. It felt comfortable to me. I have a very long upper body, and we were wearing dirt bike helmets with visors, and I didn't have any buffeting.
No, I feel like there's more buffeting than with that Transalp that's outside, but way back. It's not a dirt bike. It's that little fairing makes a huge difference.
Yeah, and I also think, like, when I think about framing this from Dakar, this is not really a windshield or like fairing to protect you from the wind. I think this exists to a mount for headlights, but it also exists for the nav tower. I think it's to protect the nav tower.
It could be, but and I know very little about rally, but
yeah. Fast desert.
But it certainly makes a difference on the highway.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe these rally guys are sitting down for long periods of time and they want some, maybe it does provide some wind protection. It provided some for me, and for us, we never ride bikes with fairings.
No.
I'm used to going down the road legally, very fast, but like my helmet's always getting caught in the wind, and I gotta like ride like this. So this was not that feeling at all. Yeah. This was not a dirt bike on the road. This was a dual sport.
I don't own a street bike helmet, so if I would have ridden this bike on the road, I would have been wearing my full motocross helmet, and I'm very sure that it
wasn't tugging at all. It wasn't bothering. No. We get another question.
Okay. It is a motorcycle that first and foremost puts the prospect of actually competing in a Dakar race in the self-supported class within the grasp of many more riders. You can actually buy this bike and not blow $45,000 US for it. That leaves a lot of money on the table for parts and entry fees, travel, etc. Yeah, I mean, that ties into what my thoughts on the previous question were. As I've said, admittedly, I don't know much about rally at all, but I do have a bunch of friends that race rally events all over the world, and generally they will be doing that on a 500 EXC with some modifications. So in my mind, and definitely, correct me if I'm wrong, but in my mind, a rally bike is basically an enduro bike, like a 450 or 500 cc. Well, I guess it would be for 450 if you're racing the Dakar.
Yep, limitation.
So maybe a 450 XC, XCW or EXCF. But you put a big tank on something like a KTM 450 or a 450L Honda. You put a rally tower on it, and you beef up the suspension a little, and you got a rally bike. Like, what am I missing?
Yeah, I think it's a rally bike is 450 cap for Dakar, long range, some sort of navigational tower, because it's a navigational rally. It's got to go fast as F across the desert.
Yep.
So it's got to handle like a race bike, and that's basically it.
And then KTM makes a 450 rally bike, which my understanding is that it's around $30,000.
Yeah, I saw somebody say 45,000.
Yeah. Now, how you get from roughly $13,000 to $15,000 for a stock KTM 450 or 500 to twice the price, I have no idea. Like, I don't understand that at all. But it's not my area of expertise.
My comment, and this is sort of unrelated. Well, it's related. A lot of people have been asking me, or no, they've been commenting saying that this motorcycle is not the motorcycle that raced Dakar. It's a consumer version of what raced Dakar. Now, that is not my understanding, because I spoke with the North American importer, And he told me the only difference between this, because I was thinking maybe we should get the Rally Pro version, because, you know, we come from a dirt bike background and I would say we're relatively competent off-road. So I was thinking we should get the hottest, fastest thing. He told me that besides the mapping and the exhaust and the navigational rally tower, the rally navigation tower, this bike is exactly the same bike that they race in the car. So from my understanding, that's the truth. And people that are wondering that are like, oh, this isn't that bike. I think it is that bike. Like, I really think it is.
Yeah, and I wonder if Gary's here, or I think, well, Henry was here.
I have no idea.
There may be people lurking that know more about that than we do.
Yeah, for sure. Throw it up. If one of these guys are knowledgeable about that, and we're talking about the Canadian importer and distributor, and I don't know if the North American importer is here, but yeah, throw in the comments, because that is my understanding.
Yeah. Okay, another comment here. Why is the 690 701 even being mentioned? Those bikes have no place in a review of a Dakar style 450. And also, who's going to compare this bike to a 690 or a 701? No one. So how does it compare to a KTM 450 or 500 or the CRF 450L, etc.?
That is like a touchdown question.
Yeah.
It's such a good question.
We thought the same thing.
Yeah, you go ahead, and then I can.
I literally, and I'm sure I've said it on Instagram or something at some point, is that I expected this bike to be in the same category as a 500 EXC or the 450 RL Honda, and as soon as I got on the bike, I realized it is not that at all. So then as soon as I was riding it, I was thinking like, okay, like what does this thing compare to? And the closest thing that I can think of, I've not thought of a closer comparison yet, is the 690 or the 701. I don't care about the engine capacity. We know that the engine on the 690 is way more powerful than this, but I don't care. What it comes down to is, if I have one of these, I'm going to look for people to go riding with that have a 690.
Oh, that's a good way. I think that there's two ways of looking at this, and it all depends on how you think. And if you're thinking that about what this bike is going to do or how it's going to be used, then I think a 690 comparison makes sense, because it's a dual sport bike and you're going to go medium distances and you're going to go a little bit of two track, and it's somewhat capable and you're not scared in the woods. Yeah. But what happened that was super interesting is, now, the other side of that, of course, is if you're a mechanical spec nerd, and that's okay, but if you are that person, then you're going to go 450, and you're going to assume that this bike should be compared with that 450 KTM. But the KTM and the Honda 450L, those are way, way, way more dirt bikey than this is. Would you agree with that, Chuck?
Definitely.
Okay.
I was expecting this to be a dirt bike, and I love. Like I'm not great at doing wheelies, but on a 450 or 500 four-stroke, I can do wheelies pretty good. I can't do it on this. It's so different.
It's the big belly.
Alberta Power Sports commented, the differences are the nav tower, mapping, exhaust, moose bib tubes, steering damper, food and water storage in skid plate.
Oh yeah, this is the exact same bike that was in the Dakar.
Yeah,
those are details, and I'm sure that the Pro mapping combined with the upswept exhaust, like the Pro caliber exhaust, is going to change the power delivery
a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, because we were playing with ECUs or mapping, and I barely know what's going on, but I could tell a little bit, but it wasn't like it turned into a different motorcycle.
No.
So this is the Dakar bike. This is it.
Yeah,
it's exciting.
There are some accessory differences.
Yeah. It's just like a trim package on a car, like say an F-150. Oh boy, I shouldn't have said Ford, because then all of a sudden everyone's going to start screaming about Chevy and GM. Anyway, a truck that you buy have trim packages, and all this is the foundation of this is the Dakar bike, and the trim packages are different between the Pro and the standard. This is called the standard regular height or something.
Yeah, there's lowered ones, but like you can buy them lowered.
One more thing I want to mention before we answer this question, Anthony, is
bring it back, Anthony.
yeah, you can bring it back. Not right now though. I want to talk about this because I found this fascinating. We just realized this like a day ago. Somebody came at me and said this is closer comparison to a DRZ or Z 400.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, like, man, that might be true. I mean, it's way more racy than those bikes, but like you're doing essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, roughly the same capacity engine.
Yeah. And I touched on this on Instagram, and I think I have some I think it's on shorts on YouTube as well. But I happen to have a DR650 and a DRZ 400 here in the shop a couple of, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, a week ago. So I went out and I rode both of them specifically. I mean, I had to test ride them anyway because they were customer bikes, but specifically to suss out the differences between these three bikes. And my thoughts were that the DR650 is closer. So the 690 or 701 is towards the street side of the Kove. It's less of a dirt bike. The DR650, I think, is exactly this. It falls exactly the same in the same category as the 690 or the 701 as a more street-leaning dual sport bike. The difference, though, is that the DR650 does everything way worse than the 690 or the 701. The suspension's worse. The motor's worse. It feels just as heavy. It handles terribly.
It's the budget version.
Yeah, and both of these bikes that I was testing, they were totally stock. Then I got on the 400, and I was like, "Whoa, this is a dirt bike compared to the Kove." So the engine felt very, very similar to the Kove. You know, underpowered. I can do a wheelie with it if I want, but it's nothing exciting. The suspension is softer than the Kove. The bike feels a lot. The DRZ 400 feels a lot lighter than the Kove, whereas the DR650 feels very similar. Just the 650, it feels like the weight is up high and it always wants to like tip over, whereas the Kove, the weight is down low.
Yep. And should we talk about the weigh-in?
Go ahead.
So we took this bike 2 days ago to our buddy Bruce's place, and he's got a cool scale that we could actually put this on top of the scale, like a big commercial scale. And what we did is before we did that, we filled it to the tippy top. I have video. I'm going to release a video of this. All three tanks, because there are three tanks, two in the front, one in the back. And we put it on the scale, and it was 378 pounds wet. And wet meaning oil, coolant,
Ready to ride.
and fuel to the tippity top. Like there was no room. And the cool thing about that is that Kove on their website lists this at 380 pounds wet. And I think it's
what other
commendable.
manufacturer does that?
Yeah, it's very commendable on Kove's part to be honest about that, because, you know, we're going to circle around this Chinese thing, I'm sure, again, but like the stereotype of Chinese and not being honest and we're getting ripped off and it's not going to be truthful was absolutely wrong. It was actually 2 pounds less than their website listing of this bike.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was impressive. And I think when I told you, you were like, oh, wow.
Yeah, that never happens.
It's
like,
not a lie.
yeah, we know that what the manufacturer, what the stated claimed weight is very, very rarely accurate.
Yeah. And it's voodoo because they're like curb weight, wet weight, dry weight, and no one knows what is what. Is that with coolant, without coolant, with oil, without oil? Like,
yeah, did they drain the shock and fork oil out of the thing?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's just, you never know. But I am impressed that they have integrity when it comes to something as simple as the weight.
I feel like that I feel like that's the segue into the whole Chinese paradigm thing. Like, and the issue that I have is, I mean, being patriotic is always it's commendable in our culture, in our Western culture. But I feel like there's a fine line between being a patriot and verging on racism, and saying that the Chinese are this way or this way or this way is very dangerous, and it borders on group politics, basically. And I don't like what has happened in history when we go in the direction of social group politics. So I'm very wary of doing that. And you know, if the Chinese are going to put out, if a Chinese man has started a Chinese company that is going to put out an excellent quality motorcycle and they have integrity, like it seems like this is the case here, then we should be commending that and not dropping him in the bucket with all of the stuff that we're used to seeing from China.
I will. My comment on the Chinese thing is, Apple iPhones are made in China, so Chinese have the ability to do high quality.
We know they can.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the other thing is about the Patriot thing. I agree, but I will say that every Patriot out there their houses are full of Chinese junk. They're full of this shop is full of things made in China.
My shop is probably 50% of the things in here.
Yeah.
Itemized would be made in China.
So we don't object to buying Chinese things, or at least that's how North American culture seems. So what we object with is the idea that Chinese produce junk. Yeah. And I think that we're here to say that this is not junk. This seems like the real thing. And then, of course, then there's a political side of China and human rights issues and all the government, and that's another big discussion. So, if you have a certain political bent where you do not believe in buying Chinese and you're not a hypocrite, then this bike's not for you. I mean, it's not for you, and that's good. Like, I mean, I also commend and applaud your steadfast decision, but I just feel like not using offshore products in North America that's a lost cause. That's a long way.
Our economy might not be strong enough to do that.
Yeah. No, I don't know. Like, everyone's raving about the price because everyone cares about price. $9,999 American, and I think that's right, roughly.
Something like that.
Something like
I don't know
that.
exactly.
Yeah, these guys can chime in because they'll know.
Do you know what the Canadian MSRP is?
I do not. But it's going to be, it will be. I guess what I'm saying is the price of this motorcycle is inexpensive, so people are paying attention. And like other Chinese products, like you're going to buy a little umbrella thing for your drink, it's going to be cheaper because it's made offshore, and you don't want to pay big dollars, and you do it regardless of their political history. Yeah. So
yeah, we can dive as deep into that.
Yeah, that one's a long hole. Yeah. Anthony, put a question up. There we go. Get us out of here.
Okay, here we go. The fuel leaking out is due to the venting. So this will be a comment on. That was in your video, right?
This is off that video. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the fuel leaking out is due to the venting. I had an issue on mine when I was riding the demo for a week. I'm sure they'll fix it, but I just had to be careful not to pinch the vent lines. Fair review. There are a couple of variables in our situation.
Yeah, because you monkeyed around and changed some things.
Yeah. So a common mod that's out already, that's commonly known, is to remove the charcoal canister. Now, when I've removed 2 of the charcoal canisters, and this one is still intact. Now, what I did not ask about is whether I should remove the check valve. It has a little check valve, and I did remove the check valves, and perhaps that was a mistake. It could well have been. Although I'm not sure if that would be, I don't know if that would affect this or not. But the bike, we had 2 different fuel leaks. Number one, I hadn't snapped in the fuel connector on the bottom on one of them, and I just basically snapped it back together, and then the fuel leak stopped. And the other one was we filled up a bike all the way, and then when we were going downhill, fuel was coming out of the vent line, and because there was no check valve or charcoal canister or anything like that, I think that was related. That one started leaking fuel, so we just took some fuel out, and that solved that problem. But that might be an issue to.
Yeah, we have all kinds of footage of that, and I think 4 things went wrong that day.
Yeah, it was good.
I got footage for everything, and we're going to put that out there because there was 4 issues that we have not seen talked about, and they're not big issues, but they are issues.
Canadian MSRP 12,249.
Woohoo! There you go.
Anyway, continue.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know what I was talking about. We probably use another. The fuel leak. We don't know about that.
Okay, so on that price, that's obviously comparable to a KTM.
A KTM what?
Like a 500 EXC.
Right.
It's comparable. And then we get into that issue of, is a rally bike worth twice what a 500 EXC is? And I think, 9 days out of the week, it's going to be, it makes more sense to buy a 500 EXC for what most people are doing than to buy a 450 rally, because it's half the price. So when you compare it to a KTM 500, it's very similar. But when you compare it to the rally 450 KTM, it's way cheaper. So
yeah, and people have been asking about the 500 EXC. I have a couple things to say about that. We haven't compared them back to back exactly. I saw that another influencer said he raced a 500 EXC against this, and this beat it or kept up. Now I can't imagine how that could be, because I've ridden 500 EXCs and they have way more power than this does.
Yeah.
So I question that result. We're probably going to figure that out in the spring, and we'll drag race these babies.
We'll figure it out at some point. But my God,
yeah.
If I wasn't used to being proved wrong many times in my life, I would say there is no way that this thing beats a KTM 500 or 450.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying that because who knows, but if
it doesn't seem realistic or likely. And that's not putting this bike down, because this bike is not that bike. It's bigger and heavier, and it has a less powerful engine or less horsepower. But this is a completely different thing than the 500 EXC.
Yeah.
A stock 500 EXC, to make it even comparable to this, you'd probably have to put, $5,000 into it, $4,000 or $5,000 worth of junk. You'd have to put a big tank on it. You'd have to put a fairing on it, to be fair. Dumb pun. And those fairings that you can buy for the 500 EXC, they exist, but man, they're expensive. So that you'd have to get a big fuel tank. The fuel tank that you did buy, because I had one of these on my 450, they're ginormous, and the weight is really high. And on my 450 KTM with the big tank, it was like practically impossible. If I wasn't as big and long-legged as I was, I had a very difficult time riding that bike. It was crazy.
And do you know how many liters you got out of that tank?
I can't remember. Less than this.
Yeah, way less. Probably half.
Oh yeah, way less than this. Yeah.
Now so the fuel tank setup that you can get for a 690 or a 701, you can get almost as much fuel in that as you can in this.
Oh, with like an auxiliary in the back,
yeah,
and the big tank on the front.
Yeah, because I think Kevin said his was like, it was 20 something.
It was
liters.
19, yeah, 19 or 20.
Yeah. So it was
2/3 of what this is, and it didn't feel.
No, it wasn't it wasn't bulbous.
And it that bike, the 701, felt a bit top heavy compared to this. I felt, but that's my comment on the 500 EXC is just like it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. The 500 EXC is more dirt worthy, but it's also a lot lighter. But it also doesn't carry fuel, and it doesn't have a fairing.
Yeah.
This has 2 rads, 2 fans.
Yeah, 2 fans stock.
Yep. The other comment I would say this. Oh, there's a question.
Oh, that's Terry. Good thing I'm bringing my 525. You can race against it.
Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, that would be fun. The RFS.
There might be snow by the time that happens, but I'm not against racing this in the snow either.
Yeah, no, we may do that. The other comment I have just off the top is ergonomics, because I'm enormous. I'm like an orangutan. I didn't think that I would be comfortable on this motorcycle, because it's clearly for Asian bodies. And I don't know, would you say like 5'10", like even shorter than 5'10", maybe? I don't know.
Like I'm not uncomfortable on it. I didn't even feel the need to move the bars at all. I feel like the cockpit is the same size as my YZ,
right, like
which is a little smaller than my KTM.
Right.
So it's a little smaller than I would prefer, but it's not enough for me to compromise my handling characteristics with risers or anything.
So here's what I did, because now Chuck had to do this too. We both have size 13 US feet. So those are some big ass
skis,
dirt bike boots. Our boots would not fit underneath the shift lever very comfortably. So we had to, or Chuck shaved the carbon fiber skid plate. So this carbon fiber skid plate used to go just underneath the foot peg, and he cut it in so we could clear this space here so we get our foot underneath the shifter.
Yeah.
Now, did you do that on the side too?
No, I didn't have to do it on the brake side.
Okay, so on the brake side, it's unaffected.
There's actually a toolkit on the brake side.
And then the suspension is very stiff. It's a race suspension for sure. Right now, I'm riding a Honda 250 RX, which is a cross-country race bike. I felt like this suspension just made me like it was just apples to apples almost. Like it didn't feel racy to me because I'm coming off a racy feeling suspension already. So I like that. The other thing I did for ergonomics was I took Rox risers, which is my favorite riser, and I need them sometimes because I'm big.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll show you guys.
Yeah, we'll zoom in there.
And yeah, Chuck, you can. It worked out really well. These are the 1-inch risers, and I wasn't looking for height. I was looking for the bars to move forward, because on the Hondas,
I'm pretty sure these are 2-inch risers.
These ones here?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they're 2.
So they're 2 inches, which perfect because they barely fit.
Yeah.
But what happened was I wasn't looking for height. I was looking for the bars to move forward to open up the distance between the handlebar and my hips. And what we did is just these 2-inch Rox risers fit perfectly where it put the handlebar forward for me, and now it feels really comfortable. What I'd like to see in the future, not like Kove is going to listen to me, but the Hondas have they have 2 options on the triple clamp, and you can move the bars forward automatically, like from the manufacturer, from stock. But we fudged this, and it works fine, and it's super comfortable for me. And I'm like, I love the ergos. I love the race suspension. I love the high seat height. Once we cleared up the foot peg issue, let's show on the other side.
Oh, and we should talk about these ginormous foot pegs. Like, they're big adventure foot pegs.
They're yeah,
awesome.
They're big honkers. Yeah, they're good because they're comfortable all day.
Not to mention, KTM could learn a thing or two from Kove about their
the kickstand's brilliant. Yeah, and on this side, if you have big feet, what happens is my heel, when my ball of my foot is here, my heel's resting on the heat shield.
Yeah, and
it really bothered me for 2 days. And now I love it. I put my foot on the heat shield, and it feels super comfortable. Like I've got this ginormous peg when I'm going down the trail.
Yeah, it still bothers me a bit, but it's whatever.
Yeah, it's not it didn't bother me for more than 2 days. Questions and comments.
Okay. Oh, okay. Here we got another thing on the screen. Okay, I saw on some owners' videos some issues with the fuel gauge and not registering fuel properly. Any issues that you've noticed?
I have a comment on that. When we went on that ride with that 701 and Andrew was leading, I don't know how many K we did that day. Do you know?
No idea. No
idea. It was a long ride. We were gone all day, and we were pretty much moving most of the time.
Yeah.
And when we got back, both bikes they said they were full.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, and Kove would be better able to answer this than us, but I think what happens is the bikes are full and the gauge shows full until the bottom, I don't know, half or 1/3, like when there's maybe 10 liters left, it will register on the gauge. That's
it seems like that.
Yeah, so like when the gauge starts to show that it's going down, you're probably within a set amount of fuel left, and Kove probably consciously made that choice.
Maybe.
Because with 3 tanks, wouldn't they have to have 3 sensors in it to register like where it is? Or?
I don't know yet exactly how that all works. I know that the rear tank drains into the front, because I'm pretty sure there is no fuel pump in the back.
Right.
So,
So this pushes into here and it draws from the front.
yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me if the fuel level only goes down once the rear tank, or like once the overall level is dropping, and as the rear tank is draining into the front, that level is probably going down really slow.
Yeah, it makes sense too, because like where do you want the weight on the bike, and you want it down as low as you can get it. So it makes sense that everything drains down into this central point here, and then drop in the engine.
Yeah.
Is that what we were talking about?
I think so. I don't know.
I have no idea. Kaya, go. You're pesky. Pesky. You're spoiled.
Okay. What are the maintenance intervals like on the Kove? I actually have no idea. I haven't even opened the manual, so I don't
know. I bet you Henry from Alberta Power Sports can answer that question.
Yes,
he probably knows.
Yeah, I saw Alberta Power Sports commenting here a little bit ago.
Excellent. Yeah, he is the Canadian distributor. So if you're in Canada and you're listening, he is the go-to source for Kove. Go, Kaya. You're pesky.
Oh, here's an interesting question while we're waiting. Can a 510 rider get their toes down when straddling the bike?
Go. I would say no.
It's pretty tall.
It's,
well, I'm 6'4", so 6 inches taller, and I'm flat-footed. There's a little bit of room under there, but
it is a tall seat.
It's tall, yeah.
It's tall. There's no question. Now you can get, this is the standard. You can get a lowered version. I don't know how many inches it takes off, but it's available.
I was talking with the guys in the States, and the lowered ones, apparently the way that they lowered them was internally, like they just put spacers in, which is proper, but apparently they didn't change the springs at all. So there's way too much preload on the springs.
Oh, right, because they're compressed.
Yeah,
right.
So if you're buying a lowered one, you probably want to put springs in it right away, and they're going to be shorter. So they didn't do it. If that information is correct, and it should be correct. You probably don't want to buy a lowered one. You're better off just getting it lowered. Any suspension shop is going to be able to lower it. It's not a big deal.
Yep. The other thing I would say about the suspension, it's a race suspension, it's stiff. I would say it's hard to say most. A lot of riders are going to want to soften the suspension and get some suspension work done. Mm-hmm. I remember we were riding through some of that 2-track and it was a bit rough. And I looked down and we were doing, I think, 60 kilometers an hour, which for us, that's pretty fast. Yeah. Normally, we're typically in the woods, not going 60. And I thought we were going quite fast, and we were on 2-track, and it was really rough, and the bike was bouncing around, and but I realized, like, the Dakar guys are riding twice that speed.
Literally. Yeah,
literally twice that speed. So it's like, oh yeah, of course it would seem harsh and stiff to me because I'm not riding it like a race guy would ride it. So if you're not going to ride it like a Dakar racer, which 99% of us are not going to, you're probably going to get suspension work done. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I suspect they're getting suspension work done.
Yeah. So usually when I do suspension work on an adventure bike or a dual sport bike, I'm stiffening it up because like the KTM 890 or the 690 or the DR 650, they are all just the valving and the springs in them are just pitiful. I really think that it's dangerous because they're so soft and they tend to speed wobble and get out of control really easily. So usually what I'm doing is I'm springing the bikes up for like to get the ergonomics correct, the balance correct, and I'm adding as much damping as I can with the limited damping that's available in like WP Explorer forks, or I can't even really add damping to Explorers. Like the Apex forks that come on a lot of the 890s, they're just terrible. But with this, I'm doing what I do with a lot of enduro bikes is I take away a bit of damping, and that's easy.
We got an update. It was on the screen. It said 500 kilometers for the first oil change. Okay. I don't even think we're on 500K on this bike yet.
No, I don't think so.
1,000 kilometers for the second oil change, I think. And then 3,000 miles is the typical service interval, 3,000 miles. So I don't know how many K that is. That's like
that's way too much.
Here it is here, and then you just threw it back up.
I would never even do that.
Yeah, second at 1,000 km, I assume, and then 3,000 miles is the official service interval. So that's huge mileage.
That's
for
crazy.
A 450 engine. Yeah, I think there's a lot of oil in this engine too. Like I think isn't it 1.7 liters?
I don't know what it has in it.
1.9 maybe.
It's going to be a bunch though because it has an oil cooler.
Yeah, it's got a lot of oil, so it makes sense that the oil change interval is long. I remember my KTM 450 had I think it was 900 milliliters. Does that make sense? An RFS?
I don't know what the RFS has.
It had like a liter.
I suck at specs.
Yeah, we're not spec people.
No. We have 260 kilometers on this one.
Crispy! I don't know if you've been there the whole time, Chris.
Yeah.
What's up?
Oh yeah, he was on right away.
Hey. Okay, how does the cockpit fit you? I'm 5'11" on a DRZ 400E and it's a bit cramped, while my KTM EXE and BMW 450X fit very comfortably.
I feel like at 5'11", you'll be fine.
Yeah, you're going to be fine. Like there's going to be lots. I mean, you're riding it stock. Like you haven't done anything.
I've done nothing.
Nothing. And Chuck's comfortable. He's 6'4". Now Chuck's a race. Like you have a race default position.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to ride it like I ride an enduro bike.
Right. But and we're used to being a little bit hunched over because when you're in the woods, you're down on your bike. You're not standing up straight like a
prairie dog.
Like a prairie dog. Yeah. So, but I think at 5'11", you'll be fine. At 5'11", your problem's going to be feeling comfortable touching the ground.
Yeah, I would say so.
Potentially. And now if you spring it and get some suspension work done, you'll probably be fine. But yeah, stock, he'll be tippy-toeing.
Yeah, and if he's a little cramped on his DRZ, I feel like he's probably coming from a little bit more of a dual sport side. And dual sport riders tend to like risers so they can stand up straight.
Yep.
Instead of like a more aggressive enduro stance. So that might be where that's coming from.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
And in that case, you might want risers on this as well, but that's easy to do.
Yep. Next question comment is, how do I see that?
You can just click that. Yeah.
Did you manage to work on the lower grunt by changing the mapping? That's an excellent question.
Mm. What did you feel?
You tell us what we did, and then I'll tell you what I felt. Because you got a couple different maps, right?
Yeah. So we just sent. So the U.S. importer sent us 2 ECUs with different maps on each, and we put those maps in 2 of our bikes. So we had 3 different maps: the stock one, and then 2 updated ones. And we went riding, and all of us noticed the difference.
Most of us. Well, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
well, it's like we talk about it as an IQ test. So I rode the standard map for half of the day at least.
Yeah.
And then you put in what they called the all-rounder.
Yeah, the 1.41.
That's in there right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So I noticed that this bike has a lot of power in the middle. There's not a ton of grunt down low, but I'm not missing anything. Like it's fine. You just, it's very tall. First gear is very tall. And when you're coming off an enduro bike, you're not used to that. But like in the dual sport world, that's quite common. In the street bike world, it's the way it is. So tall first gear, not a lot down low, meaty in the middle, but it tapers off quite quickly. Now the 6th gear, not to get too far, but 6th gear is for cruising. You're not going to be accelerating in 6th gear, but you are going to maintain a speed. So you bring it up to 110 or 120 kilometers an hour, click it into 6th. As long as you're not going up a big hill, you're going to maintain speed. Now back to the ECU. I noticed that when I got the 2nd ECU, what happened was the power, it moved down a bit more. So I noticed a little bit more on the bottom, and we weren't really up top at all, like that straight stretch. But tell me if I'm retarded.
No, I think it's. I would say what you felt was this. I would say I felt the same thing.
Okay.
One big thing that I noticed was cruising at lower speeds with the stock map. It was really jerky. It felt like the ignition timing was too far advanced almost, or it was too lean maybe. And with the 1.41 map, it's really smooth. Like you can cruise at lower speeds and it's not jerky. It's just, it's smooth. It's easy to ride.
Yeah. Now this bike in first gear, it's so tall. And I think Chuck mentioned this in his review, his first impressions. Typically when we were in the woods and we were even doing some 2-track, on a dirt bike, you'd be in third gear. I was in first and maybe second.
Yeah.
And like that's how tall first and second is. Here we go. Would a lower weight fork oil help with the dampening instead of revalving? Oh, don't tell me we're digging a hole to China. It would be appropriate considering this is a Chinese bike.
Yeah, it's a legitimate question. But yeah, this is a I think I can do it without digging to China. But it would make it softer. But if you're these are closed chamber forks. These aren't like open chamber. They're more complicated than like Explore forks. And if you are competent enough to open the inner chamber of a set of closed chamber forks, you're probably getting real close to the point where you're competent enough to pull out a few shims and tune the valving exactly the way that you want, instead of just changing the oil weight. Usually when you just change weight, it means that you don't quite have the know-how to do it properly, and then just changing the weight usually doesn't yield excellent results.
Okay, we got an awesome comment. Okay, let's say you own a KTM 500 EXC, a 701, and an R1200 GS. Which one would you trade for the Kove? Whoever came up with that is a brilliant.
Oh, that's
such a great
question.
I already know because I looked at it earlier.
This is totally fresh. Like I have not thought about this. To be perfectly honest, if you have those 3 bikes, keep those 3 bikes. I personally wouldn't trade it, because the 500 it leans more towards dirt. The 690 leans just a little bit towards the street side. But between the 500 and the 690, you can do everything that you can do with this. And I mean, 2 bikes are better than 1. And then
4 bikes are better than 3.
So I would sell the 1200 just because it's a GS.
That's an excellent.
I don't drink coffee. So
sell the BMW.
I have no interest in that. If I'm going to drive from here to Mexico, it's going to be in my truck or on an airplane, not on a 2-wheeled thing without air conditioning.
So I have an answer for that. I would say keep the 500 because it's more dirt worthy and you're going to be able to ride some single track on it, providing you know what you're doing. And the 701 is the interchangeable portion. Like if you want to play around and have a different experience, then the Kove would be for you. Like if you want to travel long distances and have a big fuel range, like a huge fuel range, if you need it, the Kove would do it. But the 701 and the Kove are
they're the closest for sure.
I think so. Like from a use perspective, they're the closest. From a technical specifications outlook, they're not the same, but they are the same in practicality.
You could, depending on what type of rider you are, you could get rid of both the 500 and the 701 and get a Kove and be satisfied.
Yeah, that's an excellent answer.
If you're a dual sport rider,
yeah.
But I'm an enduro rider, so I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. That's another excellent question. Like you could sell the 2 lower ones and get the Kove, depending on what kind of rider you are and depending on what you want to do. But if you truly love dirt and you want to spend more time in some like single track or a bit more technical, you're going to want to keep the 500. I'd want to keep the 500 because this Kove I'm not taking in this single track. That's not my aim when I leave the house.
I feel like the real question here is what life decisions have you made in order to have someone who is influencing you to sell one bike in order to get another one?
Yeah, I would say just buy a Kove and get 4 bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have 3 already. Okay, next one. Would you feel comfortable doing 300 highway miles in a day?
My answer is I would not. I don't want to do 300 highway miles on anything 2-wheeled.
Chuck is not old enough
I
yet.
don't like it.
I have done plenty of that in my time, and I actually enjoy it. It's just a different style of riding. But I would have no problem doing it on that bike. The only caveat to that is Seat Concepts needs to come out with the seat, because this is a race seat.
Yeah, it's a little stiff.
You're sitting on the seat, and it's not shrinking down even a centimeter. Like you're not getting any comfort whatsoever.
I don't know if it's quite that bad, but it is about just over 6 inches wide at the top, and it's pretty square. So like, and it's 6 inches. It's the same width from here all the way to here. Like this whole portion is 6 inches wide.
Right. So yeah, I mean, if you could stand up during that, but you wouldn't want to stand up and you're going 120 kilometers an hour, like you're doing highway speeds. You're not going to want to stand up. But if you could stand up and sit down and just give your butt a break, then you could do it. But you'd want a better seat. But the bike itself, for me, would no problem. Easy. Yeah. It's smooth. It doesn't vibrate. It was fun. Hypothetically, if we had it on the road. Okay, next question. How do you find the fit and finish compared to, say, a KTM 690, which I understand is also made in China? I do not know if that's true.
Well,
I think components of it are made in China.
Components of it, of course, are made in China.
Yep.
But the VIN says that it is not made in China.
Right. Yeah. So the frame is not made in China, probably. Or no, it's a percentage, isn't it? Isn't it a percentage of the motorcycle can't be?
I don't know, but I know like the Honda air-cooled bikes most of them are now made in Brazil, and you can tell by the VIN. If you just Google, I think it's the third and fourth character in the VIN or something. Like KTM's are VBK something.
Yep.
VBK X or MX or something. And so if you look at the first few digits of a VIN, just Google it, you can tell exactly where it's made. But fit and finish, the only thing that I have noticed, I think, there's a couple little things. On one of them, the weld on the frame on this side was a little bit goopy. Yeah, like the welding isn't.
That weld.
I don't know if you'll be able to see it on there, but the welding's not.
Yeah, no.
It's not that pretty.
That's the frame weld. I don't know if you guys can see that.
Yeah, like I could probably weld almost that well. I'm not worried about it, but the other thing that I noticed was these handlebar dampers. There's a lot of wiggle in the handlebars, which theoretically concerns me, but we've had no issues, and I don't notice it while I'm riding. All of the wiring connectors look really good. Like usually where you'll see fit and finish issues is like stuff like this. There's a USB outlet here, and this rubber thing, it clips in there really nice. It's almost like the Chinese are really good at making little electronic things. I did have an issue with the left side fuel tank on both of the ones that I had off. They are held on by a bolt here, and somewhere else that I can't see. I think maybe it's up. Anywhere, 3 bolts. And putting it back on, this rear one was really difficult to get on. I had to use a screwdriver to kind of pry it. But, if you have a Sherco, you're used to that for sure.
What do you think overall?
I have no issue. I have no issue with it.
Oh,
every bike has little idiosyncrasies.
Yep. The other thing I like about this is it's Gen 1. This is a Generation 1 thing. And typically when you buy vehicles, or at least in my family, you don't buy a Generation 1 anything because they have not worked out the niggly things that are going to be wrong with it. Yeah. But this is a Gen 1. So it's probably only going to get better.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Just quickly back to the, is there a mapping tool available?
No, not yet. I think Gary was bringing some in. I think it's maybe some dealers are going to have them.
Yep.
But I don't think that is going to be something that's actually necessary. Mapping a motorcycle, a fuel-injected motorcycle, is not like mapping a diesel truck.
Oh.
Basically, the options that you have for a fuel-injected motorcycle are how much fuel is going in and how much ignition advance you can get. And like, it's not like it has a turbo where you can control how much air is going in or how much boost. And there is a very, very tight range where you can play with the fuel, where it's either correct or it's not. You can go a little richer, you can go a little bit leaner, but you're not going to get huge differences in power. Basically, you might gain a little bit here and there. You know, going a little richer is going to generally make it a little bit smoother feeling. Relaxing the ignition timing is generally going to give you a little bit smoother feeling. But it's like, these are small differences. This, like, I don't think that for the average person, I don't think for the vast majority of people, having a mapping tool is going to make any sense. With this 1.41 map that we now have, I have no desire to mess with the mapping at all. It's good. I'm not going to make it any better.
Nice. I don't know if it's appropriate. Oh, somebody else. The one I tried had the cat converter removed. How about yours?
Stock.
So it's in there then.
Yeah.
The cats are in there. I think the Rally Pro has no cat. That's the reason the exhaust is different. It's like more flow. And you know, you're probably going to get a little bit more power. Maybe. A
little bit.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, man. I don't know too many people that are going to be like roasting this bike to its full capacity. And
I don't want the noise.
Yeah, good point. What's the speed limit on the Kove? That's an excellent question. We know the answer, at least on this bike.
Well, if you happen to be riding on the road,
on a straight stretch,
I would say you can probably get it up to about 154 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
Which evidently is almost exactly what a 450 RL is.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. So 154. I'm sure with the race rally would go faster than that, but that is fast, man. That's definitely fast. Would it be a good bike for daily commuting and for technical off-road during weekends with 50-mile highway transitions in between? I would say...
Define technical.
Yeah, everything's subjective. Would it be a good bike for daily commuting? Absolutely. 50-mile highway transitions? Absolutely, easy. But technical off-road, that would be a subjective question. Like, that is hard to answer.
Yeah, that's...
Chuck's definition of technical off-road and yours maybe much different.
Potentially.
Yeah, it's like Chuck's riding hard enduro. Is that this is not a hard enduro bike. I don't know if I'd even want to ride this on technical off-road.
I wouldn't want to.
No.
If you watch the first video, my initial thoughts on this, I took it in some trails that I would not call technical.
No. We were in flowy single track. Yeah. And it was fine.
But even the trails that I rode, the first day that I had this out, it's not made for that. Like, I don't want to ride it on.
No, like it can do it, but you wouldn't choose this. It's the wrong tool for the job. It's like, I don't know, just picking up the wrong tool off the tool bench.
Yeah.
It all depends on what you want to do. What part would you like to upgrade? The bash plate. On my 500 EXC, I had 320 millimeter front rotor, and front braking was better than the Kove. I feel like the braking on the Kove, both front and back, were absolutely fine.
I agree 100%. I have no desire to change the brakes, but I also have no desire to change the brakes on a 500 EXC. So if you're the type of person that liked the oversized rotor upgrade, then you may like an oversized rotor upgrade on the Kove as well.
Yep, that's a good point. And as far as the bash plate, when I first started riding this on the very first day, we were in some kind of weird gravel where the tires were picking up the gravel in the front and throwing it back at the bike. And I heard all these loud, like, ting, ting, ting.
Yeah.
It was clanging. I was like, what is that? But I realized what it was is the rocks were hitting the carbon fiber skid plate. And I don't think it needs to be upgraded. I mean, we didn't break it.
If you were going to ride technical single track, then yeah. But then, you should just get a different bike.
Yeah, it's not the right bike to do that. But the bash plate seems fine for me.
For dual sporting and adventure riding type stuff, commuting, like, it's pretty tough. It's tough.
Yeah, and I remember when we were out that day riding gravel stuff, I heard that tinging, like, depending on the type of gravel we were in at the time, it would happen more often. But I heard lots of those ding, dang, dang, like
Yeah.
it's going off there, and it makes a loud sound, but like there's no.
So what?
Yeah, it was. I thought it got actually fun.
Yeah.
Afterwards. I liked hearing it because I'm like, yeah, it was fun. Can I come out and ride it? Absolutely. We have this bike very specifically because anyone who's listening may or may not know, but we've been doing rides and events and tours and all kinds of stuff for really since 2007, and we are considering this motorcycle to add to our fleet for 2024. So right now, I say that is looking quite good that you could come out here and ride a Kove in our events for 2024. We should have these. I can't think of a better setup motorcycle to explore British Columbia.
100%.
Yeah, and our old rides that we did, like we used to land way up north, like the riders would fly in, and we went up into Alaska, and then we went all the way down to Vancouver on one of the years. And man, if everyone had these bikes, it would be killer, because planning that route with fuel stops were the limitation. Even carrying, fuel bottles, and even with trucks meeting the riders at gas fuel up points, that bike would solve all those problems, and it would be enjoyable. It'd be super comfortable.
Yeah, it's small enough that you can get into some nastier stuff, and it's big enough that you're comfortable on gravel roads.
Yep. I feel like it's the
perfect.
ultimate dirt biker's dual sport bike. Like stock.
Yeah.
You can dress up a 450L, you could dress up a 500 EXC or 450 or whatever, but you're going to spend a lot of money and a lot of finicky stuff to try to make that bike into this that you're buying off the shelf for probably less.
Well, that's
way less.
I was just thinking, like, what I always come back to is the point of having any motorcycle. It's not practical in almost any scenario. It's all about if the motorcycle gives you enjoyment, whether it's fixing it or buying it and selling it or riding it or looking at it in the garage. It doesn't matter. The point of a motorcycle is for enjoyment.
Yep.
And the miles per miles on this thing it's a really, really good ratio.
Yep. I think that this bike is going to steal some market share away from some of the major manufacturers, and maybe now let me add a caveat to that. If they can figure out the very, very complicated part about manufacturing and distribution.
Yeah.
I mean, if that was easy as it sounds, then everyone would be doing it, but it's not. So that is going to be Kove's challenge, is to figure out distribution and parts.
Yeah.
And if they can do that, this is going to steal a lot of market share. It's probably going to retain a lot of market share. And I think this has become a cult bike. It's perfect for a very specific job.
Yeah, and it's a job I think that a lot of people are looking for.
Yeah, everyone's talking about this unicorn thing, and unicorn is this like bike that can go into technically type stuff, which there's a limitation to that, but it can also go long distances and be comfortable.
Yeah,
and that's it. It's it.
It could be the unicorn.
Yeah, right off the shelf stock. That is the solution, rather than buying something else and trying to build it out to do what that already does, and probably guaranteed at a much lower price. And not trying to sell these motorcycles, but we are impressed.
Yeah,
I'm more impressed than Chuck, because I really like riding them. They're really fun to ride, and then with Chuck's backup mechanically, I don't know what else there is to say.
Yeah, you usually take a long time to warm up to a new piece of mechanical equipment, even your truck or like whatever.
Anything. Yeah, it takes me a long time, but I've made friends with this quite quickly.
Yeah,
and it's this motorcycle has given me new life into my cerebral love of two wheels and off-road things. It's got me excited. So anyway, I think we're going to wrap it up at this point.
I think so.
If you guys still have questions, you can always go on the eRag website or the TrueTech website. You guys can email us, whatever.
All three of us, all three of us, UI and Barry all have videos, and I feel like we all come at it from quite a different perspective. I really enjoyed Barry's as well, because he actually found, I didn't know what the engine was. Barry found it right away. So he's got some really interesting insights in it too.
Yeah, definitely check Barry's video, because he's a research machine, and he found the engine and he found a bunch of the components. And he showed us that this engine was not a new engine. It was an engine that's being used for a long time. So between all three videos, Barry's, myself, and Chuck's, there's a lot of compilation there. And if you want to leave comments, just leave a comment and we'll do our best to answer it. Like we're here and we're human and we're usually around if we're not out in the woods doing
I'm usually here.
Yeah, Chuck lives
within a 20-foot radius of where we're sitting right now.
You can't quite see his kitchen, but it's just tucked away.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, gents. Appreciate you guys coming out and watching our babble. But we're excited, and hopefully we answered enough for you guys, at least to make up your mind about what you want to do. And plus, you can tell your friends you know more than they do.